Here.
So, within these communities, as I said, there's paramilitary groups. So, you go back to the Irish Republican Army, then the Provisional Irish Republican Army, the Irish National Liberation Army, and the Irish People's Liberation Organisation. There's a lot of different groups. These groups fought a war against the British establishment, the British Crown Forces, the police and army, the Protestant community, and were also responsible for lots of bombings throughout Northern Ireland and mainland England. Their aim would have been to have a united Ireland. So within the Protestant communities, you also have paramilitary groups. The Ulster Volunteer Force, the Red Hand Commandos, the Ulster Defence Association, and Ulster Freedom Fighters. These groups were formed to defend the Protestant communities from Republican attacks. It had got to the stage where innocent people were losing their lives. A tit for tat. If Protestants were killed, Catholics were killed in retaliation. If Catholics were killed, Protestants would be killed. So by 1994, they had reached a stalemate. So a priest called Father Alec Reid, who is based in Clonard Monastery, he brought the Republican movement to the table. The main political party for the Republican movement back then was Sinn Féin. So you've heard of Gerry Adams, Martin McGuinness? No. The Sinn Féin were the main political party. So he negotiated with them that ceasefires were needed. And eventually, in 1994, the Republican movement called a cessation to their activities. This was followed several months later, where loyalist paramilitaries also called a cessation. So, negotiations started towards peace in Northern Ireland. Unfortunately, we get to 1996, and those talks break down. That's when the Provisional Irish Republican Army go to London and bomb Canary Wharf, the main financial heartland of London. The reason, they said they felt the British government were dragging their heels in the peace process of Northern Ireland. Eventually convinced to reinstate their ceasefire, and this time the talks intensify. So not only is the British and Irish government involved in them, politicians from Northern Ireland, also the Americans become involved. President Clinton was heavily involved in that peace process. At that time, the Labour government was in charge of the UK, Tony Blair. His Secretary of State of Northern Ireland was a woman called Mo Mowlam. Now, Mo Mowlam knew without the support of the prisoners, you wouldn't have peace in Northern Ireland. So she was actually at that time getting into the Maze Prison H blocks and holding meetings with the Loyalists and Republicans. She had eventually gained their trust and commitment to the peace process. So it came down to the politicians outside to work a way forward as well. Eventually in 1998, we see the signing of what we call the Good Friday Peace Agreement, signed on Easter Friday. Before any changes in Northern Ireland were to be implemented, everyone in the whole of Ireland, north and south, was given a vote. That was a simple question, yes or no, to accept the peace process. Out of the turnout, there was a very high turnout. Between 72 to 73% of the people which turned out to vote voted to accept the peace process. So lots of things were to come into force. You know, talks of the paramilitary groups decommissioning their weapons and stuff, but also the release of the prisoners. So there was only ever going to be one loser, and that was the people who had lost loved ones, because all of the prisoners were to be set free, no matter what their crime. Over a 2-year period, from 1998 until July 2000, they released a total of 439 Loyalist and Republican prisoners, some of which could have murdered up to 10 people and spent less than 10 years in prison. To have peace, it had to be accepted. So people thought there was peace in Northern Ireland until the dissident Republicans come. This is people within the Republican movement who seen it as a sellout. The end goal wasn't achieved, the United Ireland. So they named themselves the New Irish Republican Army, the Real Irish Republican Army, and the Continuity Irish Republican Army. One of the worst atrocities carried out by one of those groups was in August 1998, in a County Tyrone town of Omagh, they planted a massive car bomb that killed 29 people and injured 220 people. Over recent years, they have killed British soldiers, police officers and prison officers. A very controversial killing carried out was in 2019 in Derry, Londonderry, when a young journalist, Lyra McKee, lost her life. So within some communities, dissident Republicans are still strong, but small numbers. So even though all of the main paramilitary groups which entered the peace process did give their support, today they do still exist within communities we're going to visit. So they haven't gone away. Why do we have divisions still? Because in 1998 they said these walls and gates would be gone within 20 to 25 years. People within these communities suffered a lot. It's going to take a lot longer for them to trust each other. One of the biggest issues in communities like this is the kids are still educated separate. Throughout the whole of Northern Ireland, only 7% of schools are of integrated education. So for a lot of kids growing up in communities like this, which are divided, it may be when they leave school and go into a working environment when they first meet someone from the opposite religion. Once they're 18, socialising and mixing in Belfast is a lot different from when I was younger. So it's more acceptable for them to have a friendship or relationship. If they go on to university, universities are mixed religion as well. So you can see that younger people actually still grow up hating someone that they don't know for no reason other than living in separate communities. So we're going to travel around here. We're going to go through the first set of gates. We'll do the tour around the Protestant area and then eventually a similar tour in the Catholic area. Okay? Street. Townsend Street has a set of gates which are locked Monday to Thursday at 8:30 every evening. They reopen at 6:30 in the morning, and then at the weekends they are locked at 6:30 in the evening. Who sets the times? Today it's the DOJ, which is the Department of Justice. They hire a security company called Group 4 who has to lock the gates on time. From time to time, young kids do come to these roads and they battle with each other fist to fist. So you can see the gates in front of us here. Whenever the gates are closed, the walkways are closed as well. So for instance, if you were to park your car here at either side, pretty safe to do so. If you were to go in the city centre and do a bit of shopping, go for a meal, come up the opposite direction and don't realise that the gate's locked, then you have to walk the whole way back round again to get your car. Because there's no one there to open the gates.
Do people jump the gates? When
They can't, no, because you see the spikes on them.
Ah, okay.
So it's not an easy thing to jump them. So you can see the times here.
Oh yeah.
This is an old Protestant Presbyterian church. Some people say that's in a bit of a strange place. So it's been there for over 100 years. At one time this street, people would have lived along this street. But because of a lot of divisions, a lot of homes were demolished.
Do the people in these communities accept the fact that the gates have a time, that the gates are there? And that
Yeah, everyone knows. You know, so people ask, well, what happened if they didn't lock the gates?
Yeah, yeah.
Probably nothing, to be honest.
Yeah.
But what would happen if something did? Then there would be an outcry.
Yeah.
On the wall here you'll see a big mural here. Within communities like this, the flute bands are very popular. Lots of parades take place. So that just shows a young child with a drum and a band pole. To the left and you will see the wall which we just looked over the rooftops at. Now, as I say, later on the tour there will be a section of it which we'll actually be driving alongside. So you are going to get really close to the walls. The division would actually run right up to the foot of the hills ahead of us. Sometimes I say mountains, we call them mountains, but people look at us and say they're not mountains, they're hills.
Yeah.
You know, so you look down the street there. So, one of the first communities we're going to travel into is an area called the Lower Shankill Estate. Okay? This is an area of social housing. These would have been more socially deprived areas of higher rates of unemployment, and areas which were heavily affected over the years of the Troubles. So the type of housing in here is actually like a government-owned housing. It's owned by the Northern Ireland Housing Executive. Now, some individuals have purchased their properties from them, so they're a wee bit fancier looking than others. We will see some murals on the walls like this one here. So I'm just going to turn and pull up alongside it here. So, around a lot of these areas, lots of murals were put on the walls, artwork, which depict different things of organisations and people of the communities. Now, over recent years, some of those murals have changed. So this one here is made up of small photographs of people from this community. I would say probably going back to the last 50 or 60 years. There's a bit of a statement on that as well. Nothing about us without us is for us. So it's basically letting you know that if you don't involve people within these communities in any changes, it isn't for them. Originally on that wall there was a mural. You can see the orange one there, which shows the map of Ulster, or Northern Ireland, and 3 masked gunmen standing on the top of it. Within this community here, this is an area which is controlled by a paramilitary group called the Ulster Defence Association. They had a military wing called the Ulster Freedom Fighters. They would have been responsible for carrying out a lot of attacks against the Catholic and Republican community. All paramilitary groups, whether they're on the Protestant side or the Catholic side, are very military controlled. So each area has battalions, and within those battalions they would have companies. This particular area here is known as C Company 2nd Battalion, West Belfast Brigade.
Who would be the creative person behind creating the mural?
Initially, whenever a lot of murals like this were done on the walls, the hand-painted ones, that would have been ex-loyalist or Republican prisoners. So whenever they went into prison, they learned the talent of how to draw and paint. Initially, Protestant communities would have done murals on the walls, which would have been very traditional of King William of Orange. So, who's King William of Orange? In 1690, a Dutch prince came to Ireland and defeated the Catholic King James, becoming King William of Orange III. So within the Protestant communities, you also have the Orange Order. They hold huge parades each year to commemorate the Battle of the Boyne. The largest demonstration would be on the 12th of July each year.
Is that where they have a big fire to
And they have,
celebrate?
on the 11th night of July, they hold huge bonfires.
All right.
So the bonfires, again, is a traditional thing which goes back to when William of Orange and his army was coming to Ireland. People lit beacons to guide the ships in. So that's where the tradition of the bonfires actually originates from. So, in technical terms, the English aren't to blame for everything in Ireland. The Dutch played a big part as well.
Okay.
So we're going to make a stop up here, and we'll get out of the car. originally on this wall here on the right was a very controversial mural. A mural of Oliver Cromwell. Cromwell was said to be the Lord Protector, defender of the Protestant faith, someone opposed to the Catholic Church and Catholic religion. So through a lot of negotiations, that mural was removed from the wall and replaced with 3 stainless steel pillars: remember, respect and resolution. So you can still see the picture of the mural which was once on the wall here.
Okay, yeah.
So we're going to drive up towards this one and we'll make a stop. Are you happy enough to get out of the car?
Sure, yeah.
I know it's a bit wet, but hopefully it doesn't get too wet. Some umbrellas.
My coat is rain resistant.
Oh, is it? Well, we tend to say that it's not rain, it's just Irish mist anyhow. Right, some of the communities you would see memorials as well. Now these memorials may not necessarily be in memory of people who died over the years of Troubles, but because they were high-ranking members, memorials are put in the wall. This is a memorial of a guy called Stevie McCaig. Stevie McCaig died in the year 2000, but holding the rank of military commander and the nickname Top Gun. This memorial was put in the wall. He was said to be one of the top gunmen belonging to C Company, 2nd Battalion West Belfast Brigade. C Company was said to be responsible for more than 100 deaths in the Catholic community. So we're going to walk over here. You can see the Union Jack flag. So within the Protestant communities, they identify as being British and not Irish. For the Catholic communities, they identify as Irish. So was it a religious war? No, it was more about identity.
Yeah.
The main organisations, you can see the badges: UDA, UFF and the UIM. Who's the UIM? The UIM is the Ulster Young Militants. So within communities like this, younger people were standing up and wanting to fight back. So it was very easy to recruit people, whether it be on the Protestant side or the Catholic side, because the more communities get targeted, the more younger people wanted to defend their communities. So these organisations grew in numbers over the years. Over here you're going to see the 2 masked gunmen. This is actually a very good one to record, because if you look at the 2 gunmen there, what are they doing?
They're pointing right at
They're
you.
pointing at us.
Yeah, they are.
Keep your eye on the guns as we walk around the corner.
They follow us.
Aye, go and stand in the middle with your back at the masked man.
And you want me to turn around?
Yeah, go walk over and stand at the back of him. With your back. Yep. Now if you look down at the gunman.
Oh my God, they're still pointing at me. Wow.
So if you walk back and forward with the camera, just record it.
They follow you, they totally do. That's amazing.
So that's to let you know that whenever we are in communities like this, we're always being watched. People listen to what people are being told, and if they believe you were being told a lot of shit, if they overheard and walk back, they would open their mouths, and they have every entitlement to do so. 25 years ago, 26 years ago when the tour started, people in communities like this weren't used to strangers coming through their areas.
How did they respond to that?
They, at the time, some of them were saying they felt like they lived in a zoo.
Maybe they're being exploited.
Yeah. Nowadays, they realise people want to learn about their communities and have become to accept it. But that's provided people are told the right story.
Yeah.
You know. Over here you can see another memorial in memory of 2 people which did a lot of work for this community. But again, you can see the badges of the organisation. So that just lets you know who controls these particular areas in which we're in. is redevelopment in this community. So obviously you can see this is a newer type of housing in comparison to this. So by building new homes, they can do away with a lot of the murals. Because whenever murals were put on the walls, if you lived in one of these homes and didn't like it, just touch it. What you'll notice as well throughout the Protestant communities, you're going to see the poppy as well. Because lots of commemorations to the First and Second World War as well throughout some of them. Here on the left, which were only opened about a year and a half ago. Stars straining towards a restorative society. So again, that's restorative justice set up in communities like this, where community workers can work with young kids rather than them getting a criminal record brought through the courts, the police. They can bring the victim, the offender together and work their way forward a more positive way. Again, you can see the Divis flats, so you can understand why the British Army were based on top of those, because they were able to watch everything. I called Stevie McRae. Stevie McRae was a member of the Red Hand Commandos, an organisation linked to the Ulster Volunteer Force. Stevie had served 16 years in prison, and on his release was celebrating in a pub whenever the IPLO burst into that pub. That was a random attack on a loyalist bar. Unfortunately, Stevie lost his life, so that would have been seen as a goal.
How many people were shot? There was like 6 or 7, or in that pub?
There was different pubs.
Okay, alright.
Pubs were an easy target.
Alright.
There was lots and lots of pubs. On that memorial there, you can see the 3 flags. The flag of Northern Ireland, the Ulster flag, the flag of the United Kingdom, and the flag of Scotland. Close links between Northern Ireland and Scotland as well. Pictured in that memorial is the Maze prison compounds. That was an old World War II US military base, which was converted to a prison in the early stages of the Troubles. That was used to house both loyalists and Republicans. Whilst held in the compounds, they were treated as political prisoners. So they did wear normal clothing as well as military style uniforms. That all changed in 1976 when the British government opened the Maze prison H blocks, which we'll talk about later on in the tour. Over here you have one of summer of '69. It just shows the old homes and nothing to do with the song of Brian Adams either. So this is North Belfast we're travelling out onto. North Belfast on the Crumlin Road is an area which was always on the news. Down to the right on the Crumlin Road, but on the left hand side, is one of the main hospitals of Belfast. That is called the Mater Hospital or the Mater Hospital. Protestants call it the Mater, Catholics call it the Mater, but it doesn't matter what you call it. Hospitals looked after both communities. They didn't discriminate against religion. A lot of times they could have been treating victims with an aggressor in the bed beside them. So, out onto the Crumlin Road here. These 2 buildings were on the news every day of the week over the years of the Trouble. So, on the left hand side here, we have the old courthouse. This opened in 1849. It would have originally been the county antrim courts. Belfast became a city in 1888, granted by Queen Victoria. So after it became a city, this became the High Court of Belfast. On the right hand side is the Crumlin Road Gallows, the Crumlin Road Prison. The prison dates back to 1846. And nicely built, the house 500 prisoners. They also called it the last execution was in December 1961. With the outbreak of the Troubles, the prison was converted to a remand prison, where both loyalists and Republicans would have been held when they were charged with an act of terrorism. So a prison which was built for 500 people at the peak of the Troubles was holding 3 times plus that. Whilst held in Crumlin Road Prison, you could have been held on remand for anything up to 2 years. There was a lengthy process to get in front of the judge. So it was known for the police to make allegations against individuals, charge them with an act of terrorism, bail would be refused, and they could legally keep them off the streets. Eventually going in front of the judge, and if they were found not guilty, they were set free. If they were found guilty, they were then sent to the Maze Prison H blocks. Both these buildings closed down in the late 90s. The courthouse was sold to a developer who had talked about converting it to a luxury hotel. That has fell into disrepair. The building probably isn't even worth saving. It's laid that long, the kids get into it and set fires in it, so there's no roof or anything in it anymore. Unlike the prison, which was taken over by North Belfast Trust, so you can actually do tours around it.
Yeah, I saw that.
There's a restaurant in it. You can rent a cell and watch a movie in it. You can stay the night in it. There's also a whiskey distillery in it as well, McConnell's whiskey. So it's been put to good use now, and has been a very good success. So it has for the North Belfast Trust. On the right there, the row of housing, that would have been where prison officers once lived. Now, whenever it was used to hold paramilitary prisoners over the years, that would have been a high security prison. You wouldn't have seen any of this. It would have had high fencing all around it. The area of North Belfast was an area which was heavily affected over the years of the Troubles. More people died per square mile than anywhere else in Northern Ireland. In the early 1900s, North Belfast actually had a very large Jewish community living in it as well. Clifton Park Avenue, which is the next street on the right, if we were to go up there, there would be a small wall separating the Protestant Catholic areas. On the Catholic side, still stands the original house where the 6th President of Israel was born, Term Herzog. The Herzog family is actually still involved in the government of Israel. Born in Belfast and educated in Dublin. So throughout Northern Ireland, throughout the Protestant communities, they would have support for Israel. Where in the Catholic communities, they support Palestine and Gaza. So later on the tour in the Catholic communities, you're going to see a lot of murals supporting Palestine and Gaza. So we're going to turn left. We're going to make our way down onto the Protestant Shankill Road. So our next stop is going to be at the Biardo Memorial Garden.
Did has anyone estimated how much would it be Great Britain would have profited from the legal system regarding the community? Because the reason I ask is right now in the United States, they're making these encampments where they're pretty much arresting people of color, and they're making huge investments into this, and the people that are involved are billionaires that are really set to profit off of the institutionalization.
The government itself, the only ones which probably made a lot of money is the barristers and solicitors. Because here you have what do they call it now? You know, legal aid.
Okay.
So for people who are lower incomes,
that need legal aid.
They get legal aid. They get their solicitor and barristers paid for.
Okay.
So they get legal representation at no cost.
Okay. Much like the U.S. Yeah.
Is it similar in the US? Yeah.
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 But it's not quality. legal help most of the time.
Sorry?
It's not a quality of legal help in those cases most of the time. In the United States, anyway.
Right. Well, I know here at the minute the barristers are having a strike because they want more money.
Yeah.
For some of the cases that they're handling.
Yeah.
So they do. If we were to go straight across here, that street ahead of us is Northumberland Street. At the bottom of that street, there's 2 sets of steel gates. Later on the tour, we'll end up at those gates.
All right.
Has Detroit been affected with ice yet?
There's been sightings of ice, and there has been people arrested and detained.
Okay.
But it's not as rampant as like Minneapolis right now, stuff, which has been horrible. We used to live in Minneapolis.
Did you?
Yeah. And it's a beautiful community. There is a really large Somalian population, which has been a huge target of a lot of the ice raids right now.
Road. This is an area that suffered a lot over the years of the country and the movement. This is a memorial garden which marks the spot of a pub which was targeted in 1975. So in 1975 the Provisional Irish Republican Army drove to this pub. They pulled up outside it and they shot 2 men dead. They then opened the door and threw a hold-all in containing explosives. That killed a further 3 people. The youngest girl was 17 years of age. A total of 68 people were injured in that bomb attack on a Wednesday evening. Now whenever we go into this garden, you're going to see a lot of it refers to IRA Sinn Féin. Today Sinn Féin is the largest political party in Northern Ireland. They have a mandate and they have been elected, so they're entitled to be there. People in this community would be against Sinn Féin because some of their members sitting in government today are ex-convicted members of the IRA. They have been responsible for killings and bombings. So we're going to go into the garden.
I'm going to grab my bag.
Okay. Just roll up at there. So this is children which died over the years of the Troubles. The kids you see pictured here are not just from the Protestant community, they are from the Catholic community as well. You may notice that some of them could have been playing on the streets whenever the British armies were targeted in bombings or shootings. There's one particular one that stands out there, and that's when the IRA had a fallout with one of their members. They went to shoot one of their own members and shot his child dead. This is 2 children which died on the mainland in England, close to Manchester in Warrington, after a bomb went off in the town centre. Over here you have the carnage in London, where the horses lie dead on the road. That's when the household cavalry was targeted. You've got the Birmingham pub bombings, the slaughter in Omagh, the bombing of Canary Wharf. People in these communities see similarities to what Islamic extremists were doing in Europe to what the IRA were doing in these communities. Hotels were targeted a lot as well. One of the worst bombings on the Shankill was in October 1993. On a Saturday afternoon, a bomb went off in a fish shop. 9 people lost their lives. The youngest girl, 7 years of age. Both her mother and father, 27 years of age. You can see their funeral cortege here. The bombing of a Baltimore showroom, a furniture store, in December 1971. A 17-month and a 2-year-old child. The Kingsmill sectarian massacre around border towns were also heavily affected. This is Jean McConville. a mother of 10 children. Jean McConville lived in the Divis flats. One night during a fierce gun battle between the IRA and the British Army, Jean McConville went to the aid of a British soldier. The next day, the IRA came to her flat. She was labelled a tout. They told her 10 children, your mother will come home. They took her away and tortured her for 7 days. They shot her in the head and secretly buried her body. For over 20 years, her children wondered was her mother ever coming home. She eventually did in a wooden box. The chief suspect of that was Jerry Adams. Bloody Friday, bloody Saturday, bloody Sunday. Every day was a bloody day in Northern Ireland. The IRA even had an active service unit in Germany. A 6-month-old baby shot dead because its father was a serving member of the Royal Air Force. In March 1988, the elite British Army, the SAS, shot dead 3 members of the Provisional Irish Republican Army in Gibraltar. They believed they were there to commit a mass bomb attack. In Northern Ireland, the British Army had a shoot-to-kill policy. That was extended to Gibraltar. Those 3 members were brought back to Belfast to be buried, and that's when a loyalist called Michael Stone posed as a journalist. He went to the funerals, and as they lowered the coffins into the ground, he started throwing hand grenades in amongst the mourners. He then opened up with a handgun before being apprehended close to the motorway, the M1 motorway. A week later, people he killed were being buried, and 2 British corporals got caught up in the funeral cortege. They were dragged and beaten from their car. They were then bungled into a taxi and drove to Casement Park, where they were stripped and shot with their own guns. So death always led to death in Northern Ireland. This is 3 Scottish soldiers who, after one night out socialising in Belfast, were picked up by 3 women. They thought they were going for a good time. They were taken and shot and left at a roadside junction. This is Jeremy Corbyn. Have you ever heard of Jeremy Corbyn? No. Jeremy Corbyn was once the leader of the Labour Party in the UK. People would have been against Corbyn because of his links with members of Sinn Féin and also his links with Hamas and Hezbollah. This is Tony Blair, who would have been seen as a warmonger. He sent British troops into Iraq looking at a weapon of mass destruction that didn't exist. For young girls growing up in the Catholic communities, if they were seen to have a friendship or a relationship with a British soldier, they would have their hair shaved off in public, tied to a lamppost, and have a bucket of moulded tar poured over them, like this young girl pictured here.
Oh my Lord. Wow.
That's what Nazi Germany did in the Second World War.
Wow.
This is Jerry Kelly. He's a member of our local assembly, a member of Sinn Féin, responsible for the bombings in London in 1973. Again, people see similarities to the 7/7 suicide attacks, which was just over 10 years ago. This is Enniskillen, County Fermanagh. People out commemorating the First and Second World War, remembering Sunday, and a no-warning bomb went off at the Cenotaph, killing 11 people and injuring dozens more. This man pictured here is Bick McFarlane. Bick McFarlane was a leading Republican who actually trained in the priesthood. Bick McFarlane was responsible for the bomb and gun attack where we stand today. He was also a Maze escapee prisoner who hid out down south and was responsible for the death of this Irish soldier. So this is some of the reality of what was happening, not only on the streets of Northern Ireland, but also in mainland Ireland.
War kind of extended down to southern Ireland, or was it really kind of just focalized?
It would be mainly in the north, but in around 1974-75, the Ulster Volunteer Force was responsible for bombings in Dublin and Monaghan. probably after that, for some reason, the bombing stopped. So there may have been a loss of the person who was capable of making the bombs by the loyalist paramilitary groups. Very few bombings were then carried out. Most of the bombing atrocities were carried out by the Republican movement. You know, a lot of weaponry supplied to the Republican movement would have been supplied through Libya as well. So Colonel Gaddafi was the one who introduced the Republican movement to Semtex explosive, which was a lethal explosive. Ulster Volunteer Force. Now, the Ulster Volunteer Force were originally formed in 1912 against Home Rule in Ireland. They actually went away and fought in the First World War, and after that war they were disbanded. Then in the late 60s, a group takes the name of the Ulster Volunteer Force and forms a paramilitary organisation. This one particular mural here is in memory of 3 members of the organisation which were shot dead along this footpath.
Here, stick the camera out the window.
Then over to the left you have the English Brigade of the Ulster Volunteer Force, the First World War, and to the right the Scottish Brigade. So within communities like this, in the First World War, hundreds of families lost members at the Battle of the Somme in 1916. So on this wall here, you will see the Ulster Tower, which was built in France in memorial of people from Ulster which lost their lives. So we're going to make our way down towards the area of the division now. This is where one of the main sections of the wall is, which we can actually drive alongside. Over to the right you'll see a memorial in memory of modern day members of the Ulster Volunteer Force. Then on the left you'll have one which is done by Govan Somme Association. So Govan's actually a place in Scotland. Again, around these areas it's all social housing. All of these areas, or for lots of these areas, especially close to the division, are areas which were redeveloped during the mid-80s and early 90s. So a lot of the old side streets around these communities have gone. So you can see the wall ahead of us here now. See the rooftops of the Catholic housing. On this road again, 2 sets of steel gates. This is North Howard Street. These gates, 8:30 at night, 6:30 at the weekends. We'll eventually be coming down the Falls Road, past this road. We're going to make our way now up alongside the wall here. This is a piece of artwork which was done by a lady in the community here last summer.
It's beautiful.
That's all done with cement on the wall. This wall itself has now got the name of the Peace Wall. That goes back to 1998 when President Clinton visited this wall. He wrote a message on the wall: strength and wisdom are not opposing values. Big mistake made. It wasn't preserved. No one had foreseen the amount of visitors that they're going to start coming to Belfast. Now, graffiti artists do artwork on the wall, and over the years, millions of visitors have written messages to people. For a lot of people who come to Belfast, if they don't do a tour and stay in the city centre, they'll go away with the impression that Belfast is like any European city. But yet, we have huge divisions. So for a lot of people, they hear the wall which divides countries. Here you have a wall which divides two communities. Two communities where children grow up, hearing each other over the walls, but may never know each other. So we'll jump right there and just going to get the regular message on the wall. So, the graffiti artists, they do artwork on it. They aren't allowed to do anything political on it. People from around the world, they write their own messages and they can write whatever they want. It's entirely up to you. Nice bits of silver there. Just find a wee spot.
You gonna write something?
Yeah.
Catholic and also from Southern Ireland.
Were they? Yeah.
Yeah. And they've mentioned these. They've mentioned this, but you know, I don't think that with through their ancestry that they were that kind of like
involved.
Yeah, well, then involved, or they didn't have any like relationship with the community up here.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I mean, when you see things on the news, it's much different than being a relative of somebody.
Yeah, yeah.
Through the news,
yeah.
You know,
where you could relate to it.
Relate to it, and yeah, exactly. I'd say relate to it or empathize on a deeper level.
Yeah.
You know?
Here, we're going to turn left and we're going to go through a set of gates. The gates which we're going to go through, they are electronically controlled gates. They open each night until 10:30. They reopen again at 6 in the morning.
Are resources equally available on each side of the gate?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
I mean, you can access either side if need be by travelling to the city centre and around if you need it. That's a wee coffee shop opened in there last summer, been around the world. So, we're going to travel from Britain and travel to Ireland now.
Is it important for people providing tours to have a neutral stance? Yeah, I mean, obviously, peace is the. Yeah.
I'm going to do both sides. Now, from time to time, we do get people requesting a driver from one side and a driver from the other. So you know, that's going to be a different tour. You know, they just want.
Yeah, it's more propaganda. Yeah.
You know, so. These gates here, as you can see, the police monitor these gates with a camera.
Oh, wow. And
these are electronically controlled. So at night time, whenever they are closed, if an emergency vehicle needed to get from A to B, the police can open it.
Okay.
And then close it again.
Now, which side has closest access to a hospital? Would it be
There's
this side?
hospitals on both sides.
On both sides, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So hospitals, say they look after both communities.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter what side
Yeah.
the hospitals on.
Now, I would assume it wasn't always like that. Correct?
Yeah, over the years of trouble, yeah.
Yeah.
Hospitals were neutral.
Yeah, okay.
So we're now in the Catholic side. We're going to go left, but if you look up the road to the right there, you can see the way the wall goes right up along the footpath here. See that?
Oh, yeah.
That goes right up to the foot of the mountains. And a month or two, the wall from this side isn't very noticeable because all the bushes and trees up are all in leaf, and they kind of hide a lot of it. So we're going to travel into the Clonard. Clonard is an area which was talked a lot about over the years of the Troubles. For a lot of people, the Clonard is where the Troubles began. For a lot of people, they would have been, whenever the Troubles broke out, they were very disillusioned the way the IRA didn't come out to defend their communities. And that's where you have the emergence of the Provisional Irish Republican Army. So as you can see, we're at the other side of the wall there. Railings, you have the 4 shields for the 4 flags of the 4 provinces of Ireland. Also on the gates, a big symbol for the Republican movement is the Phoenix bird. The Phoenix rose from the ashes. Out of the burning the homes in Bombay Street arose the Provisional Irish Republican Army. You see this home here flies the flag of Ireland, also the Easter lily. So this is Clonard Martyrs Memorial Garden. Again, you can just see the large phoenix on the gates there. Okay, so we're going to go into the garden.
Thank you.
Along the back wall here, we have volunteers. People who volunteered to fight for a cause they believed in. So again, people weren't forced to join these groups. In the background, you can see the homes have no roofs, no doors, no windows. That's after the burning of the homes around here. This is Bombay Street, never again. So we're actually in Bombay Street. Jordan Cawley was one of the first to die. Over here, you can see the floral wreaths are all in the colour of the flag of Ireland. So, in a couple of weeks' time, Easter commemorations, you're going to have all the flags erected and memorial parades within these communities. This is Clonard Martyrs, C Company 2nd Battalion Belfast Brigade, a roll of honour which goes back to the 1920s during the partition of Ireland, the 1940s, the border campaign, and then the present day Troubles. 2 names, Don McCann and Sean Savage, 2 members of the Provisionals which were killed in Gibraltar by the SAS. With them was a girl called Mairead Farrell. Her name isn't on the plaque here because she belonged to a different unit in the Beachmount area. This is civilians which were murdered by loyalists of British forces during the course of the conflict. Again, we go back to the 1920s and finishes in 2004. Dominic Moran was hit 16 years prior to his death with a plastic baton round and was left in a vegetated state. After his death, he was put as a casualty of the Troubles. Over the years of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, the British Army and police were firing plastic baton rounds to disperse crowds. They were trained to fire them at a distance of 35 metres. When used right, they were supposed to be non-lethal and non-fatal. When used wrong, where they were shooting them at a distance of 5 meters, a lot of people were injured and seriously injured. 17 people lost their lives, 9 of which were children. Whenever you get hit with something like that, it causes serious injury or death.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Wow.
In 1981, it's estimated that during the hunger strikes, the police and army fired 30,000 of these.
Good Lord.
You can just see along Bombay Street here, the back of the homes are caged in. That's because this wall would never have been as high as what it is, and people would have came and threw bricks and bottles and whatever they got their hands on at each other. Unable to physically see each other, they still lobbed over the wall. First couple of homes have removed it now, because they feel there's no need, because the wall is so high. Turn to go back up.
Yeah. Wow.
It's all part of the redevelopment during the mid-80s and early 90s. The Redemptorists, an order formed in Italy in 1736. The monastery is built to a French Gothic style and opened in the 1850s. Obviously there's a mosque going on now. But this monastery is where the secret talks took place to broker the first ceasefire of 1994. No, there's a mosque. We can't cancel it. That's why it's so busy here. Just opened it there just so we could get a clear shot with the camera. Small businesses set up within those buildings now.
But what was being produced in those buildings?
That they would have been linen mills.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
All right.
this was a big linen area. You know, you had the mill here, originally a mill here where these apartments are, and then a bit further down Conway Mill.
Yeah, I was surprised to learn how big of a linen mill Belfast really is.
Yeah. So we're coming out onto the main Catholic road here, the Falls Road. 2 pubs, one on the right and one on the left. The one on the left is a social club. It's the Ancient Order of Hibernian. A picture there, our mural, which shows the Mass Rock. So during the 1600s, penal laws were introduced in Ireland. The Catholic Mass was banned by the English, and Mass was held in secrecy. The pub on the right is a Gaelic football bar, McDavid's. So you can see the flag of Ireland flying outside it there. Up to the right hand side is the Royal Victoria Hospital. So you can see some of the shops and stuff fly the flag of Ireland here. On the left hand side, this is one of the offices of Sinn Féin. So this is their political press office. As you can see, there's bollards all around it to stop cars ramming into it. It has security cameras, and it's fully fitted with bulletproof glass steel. So I would say this is the most famous mural in Ireland. Have you heard of the hunger strikers?
We saw it in the video, but there was a lot of information to absorb.
Well, prior to 1976, both Loyalists and Republicans were held in the Maze prison complex. They were treated as political prisoners. In 1976, the British government opened the Maze prison 8 blocks. The plan was to take away their political rights, make them wear prison uniforms, associate with criminals, and do prison work and so forth. Whenever they moved the Republican prisoners to the main prison H blocks, the Republicans refused to put prison uniforms on, wore no convicts uniform. They started a protest called the blanket protest. The blanket protest is where they wrapped themselves in a prison blanket. That eventually led to the dirty protest. The prisoners refused to wash, they refused to shave, they refused to cut their hair, and rubbed their own excrement on the walls of their cells. By 1979, Margaret Thatcher was elected the Prime Minister of Great Britain. She quickly became known as the Iron Whip, someone who gave in to no one's demands, especially in her eyes, terrorists. So in 1980, the Republican movement began to refuse to eat prison food. During that period, they lost it for several weeks, and then they were led to believe that they had an agreement with the British government. 1980 came to an end, and we realised they had been found. There was no agreement. So Bobby Sands, who was in charge of the prisoners, called for the hunger strikes to resume again in 1981, where he would be first to enter into them, with an agreement that every 2 weeks another prisoner joins him, move on to trial. From May to August of 1981, 10 of those prisoners starved themselves to death. Bobby Sands died after refusing to eat food for 66 days. Out of the 10, the most was 73 days, and the least was 46. So this shows the dedication and the belief that the war that these men were fighting, when they were able to physically sacrifice their own lives through starvation. Bobby Sands would be the most famous because whilst on his deathbed, he was elected a member of the British Parliament of Westminster, becoming an MP. That was seen as a political achievement for the Republican movement. Within weeks, Thatcher rewrote the rules, but it couldn't happen again. So Bobby Sands, MP, fought the other revolutionary story. If he's going to hop out, we'll get a photograph of this at it.
And that would have been a textile mill?
That would have been a linen mill,
okay.
yeah. That would have been Ross's mill. You can see the difference in the redevelopment here as well. We have small cul-de-sacs and walkways. You know, originally this would have been streets around here, long streets of older housing, which a lot of the homes in the late 1800s, early 1900s was actually built by the mill owners for mill workers to live in.
Okay.
You'll see the wall at the top of this street. On the right hand side you'll see the letter H, which commemorates the 10 hunger strikers as well as 2 early hunger strikers who died in mainland England. So that letter H isn't for hunger, that represents the shape in which the prison blocks were built. There was a total of 8 prison blocks built to house Royalists and Republicans. This is another memorial garden here. This is D Company, which were nicknamed the Dogs. You see the letter D on the fence and on the wall. A favourite weapon of theirs was the Armalite rifle. Also you can see the flag of Ireland flies with the Palestine flag. Next road on the left is the gates where we went up alongside the wall. Over to the right, the twin spires of the Catholic Cathedral St Peter's. Belfast didn't actually have a Catholic cathedral until 1986, when that old church was given cathedral status. On the wall here, our struggle continues. You can see the flag of Ireland and the Palestine flag. So we're going to drive up this street and then we'll come back down again.
Okay.
One of Nelson Mandela. In my country, we go to prison first, then become president. Similarities in Northern Ireland. You have faces here of people who fought against imperialism over the decades in Ireland. You have one in memory of fallen comrades of the Irish National Liberation Army. You can see in the other picture there, them wearing their military style uniforms. We serve neither king nor NATO, but Ireland. One of the Spanish Civil War, made up of 35th International Brigade. Sri Lanka. Then you have two flags of Ireland here, calling for people to join the IRNC or the Irish Republican prisoners, political prisoners. So we'll drive up through the gates and then we'll cover these on the way down again. You can see the security cameras ahead of us. Two sets of gates here. In the centre is the church, the New Life City Church. Then we go through the gates and we enter into a Protestant area. So we're just going to turn and we'll go back through the gates. A couple of memorials here. One in memory of Polish airline pilots which died during the Battle of Britain in the Second World War. And then one in memory of the man called John Henry Patterson, who was born in Westmeath in Ireland, rose through the ranks of the British Army, fought during the First World War with the Zion Mules and the Jewish Legion, retired to Los Angeles, where him and his wife were cremated and buried after death. Then in 2014, their ashes were removed and taken to Israel, where he was given the highest honour a Christian could be given by the Israeli Defence Force. So that's why you have the flag of Israel here.
Okay.
People who lost their lives during the First World War from around this community, their names are on the plaques. Then you have one of the Commonwealth. And then a lot of people would often ask, do Protestants drink Guinness? Of course they do. The Guinness family were a Protestant family and staunch unionists, as you can see on this wall here. So we travel through the gates again. On the left we have one of Frederick Douglass, who campaigned to abolish slavery. In the centre of Belfast you would have a statue of Frederick. Also you have soldiers of the Republic, the 1916 Easter Rising executions, also the 10 hunger strikers grouped together. The solidarity of prisoners of war, so a connection between the Republican movement and Palestine goes long back than the outbreak of the war just over 2 years ago. Originally the Republican movement did train with the PLO at the time Yasser Arafat was in charge. You've got the Battle of the Falls in 1970, where the British troops come under attack, riots within the streets, curfews were introduced, and women campaigned against those curfews. So we're going to drive down and out onto the main road. Just over 2 years ago, Israel and Palestine and Hamas went to war with each other. About 20 months ago, murals of the Republican movement were then painted over in support of Palestine and Gaza. So you're going to see those as we come out onto the main road here. So the first mural as we go round the corner is of leading Republicans from this area. One to say that is of Jim McCabe, who campaigned against use of plastic bullets. Everything else is for Palestine and Gaza. So we'll drive slow down here so you can record it. You may notice the last one here states that Republican prisoners still exist today. That's relating to dissident Republicans, people opposed to the present day ceasefire. So if there's anything you want to photograph behind us, I can make a stop if you want to. It's entirely up. Right on the left here, the gates on that are permanently closed. That leads through to a street where there's no access for traffic to go through. So the gates are permanently locked. Yeah.
What's the purpose of them permanently locking it?
Because there's no reason to open them, because it just goes through to a dead end street. So if they were to open them,
it's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere for access for people. So that brings us back down to the first street where we made our stop here on the left, Townsend Street, making our way back towards the city centre. So at night time, whenever all of the gates are closed, to get to the opposite side, you simply drive to the city centre and drive around.
For both sides of the people on the wall,
yeah,
I don't really. I mean, I have a lot to digest still, and I have a lot more to learn. But it just seems like there's so many variables that, it's just a complicated thing. And you know, as somebody coming from the U.S. to kind of observe this, it's kind of like, wow, the U.S. is a whole lot of complexity right now. It's nice to get away from it, to be honest with you, but at the same rate, you know,
every country has its issues.
Yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, some countries it's more publicized than others.
Yes, yeah. And I'm curious to know, you know, how does the UK? I mean, obviously they're kind of like here to be neutral to both sides, but I would assume government policy at some point would kind of favor one versus the other. And clearly they just want people to get along, and so they're kind of like they're creating like a neutral space for people to exist. But I'm curious to know, like,
well, what is set in place is that whenever the UK government believe there's a time for a border pull, it's up to the Secretary of State to call that. Now, that's not to say that everyone would vote for United Ireland, but it's not to say that it may happen in the future. But that's not going to say that if a United Ireland happened next year, that the walls and gates would disappear, because in fact they're not. That would create more issues and divisions within the communities.
Are you heading back to our
where are you going to?
I was going to ask you, can you maybe drop us off at the Rusty Saddle?
Yeah.
I don't have a reservation. I'm a little curious.
No, Rusty Saddle's okay.
Is it okay? Okay.
Pub food, it's nice. I've eaten in it a few times myself.
It seemed like an interesting interior, and
have you been round to the Crown Bar yet?
No, we have not, and we heard
the
from
Crown is somewhere you have to visit.
Yeah.
The Crown dates back to 1849. Okay, it still has its original architecture and fittings.
And those people that did the interior for that did the interior for the city of Belfast also. That's
Yeah.
what the
Well,
woman had said anyway.
what they say is
I know.
a lot of the Italian, if you look at the outside of the crown, it's very Italian ornate tile work.
Yeah.
So what they say is, whenever the Italians were here building some of the Catholic churches, when they were moonlighting for free beer, they were working on the crown bar.
Okay.
Now, if you were to go into the crown today, it's now owned by the National Trust.
All right.
It still has all its original fixtures and fittings. Small individual cubicles, where if you're lucky to get one, you can close the door and no one can see who's sitting and drinking. If you were to use the toilets, you'll realise that very little of it has changed from 1840.
Yeah.
So it is definitely somewhere worth a visit to as well. Opposite the crown is the Europa Hotel. The Europa Hotel was once the most bombed hotel in Europe. It was bombed a total of 33 times over the years of the Troubles.
Still here. Wow.
It opened in 1971, and until 1993 it had been bombed 33 times. The Holiday Inn in Sarajevo is now the most bombed hotel in Europe.
Wow.
So when he's in Belfast Hill, when do you leave?
We leave tomorrow morning.
leave tomorrow?
Yeah, we get on the train and head to
We'll
Dublin.
definitely get a visit round to the crown.
Yeah.
Next to it is Robinson's.
Okay.
Robinson's has a bar out the back. It's called Fibber McGee's. Later on you'll get a trad session. You'll probably get the traditional music.
Okay.
And it's a big open fire and stuff. So it's done like an old Irish bar.
Oh, very cool.
So it is. It's very nice as well.
Have you been to the United States?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where have you been?
I was in Vegas okay. 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
Been to New Orleans, Florida. Yeah, been around parts of it, yeah. Vegas was an experience, like, you know.
Yeah.
So I've done Vegas. I don't gamble, but just to see the sights, we wanted to do the Grand Canyon and stuff like that. So it was nice. So it was. Plenty of furniture to look back on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Excellent
Yes,
tour.
enjoy your dinner.
Thank you.
Crown Bar, just at the corner, not that corner, the next corner, turn left and just walk down. This is a nice pub here, opened up as well. On the corner here, Amelia Halls. It opened there, I suppose, prior to last Christmas. It probably opened about 16 months.
Okay.
Spent an absolute fortune in it. It's very Italian vibe.
All right.
So you'll get Italian food, pizza and stuff, pasta and stuff like that. You know, in here you'll get common pub club, you know, some towards the basement.
Okay.
They do good food.